Ranking member, the gentleman from Mississippi for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Very rarely do I find witnesses with very little difference in testimony. So I compliment you on that. But in our national cybersecurity strategy is going to shift toward a more aggressive offensive cyber strategy. We'll need to ensure that the agencies responsible for such efforts, such as U.S. Cyber Command and the National Security Agency, have the staffing and resources necessary to carry out offensive cyber operations. Yet both Cyber Command and NSA have had personnel reductions over the last year. And all of you have talked about capabilities. I mean, if you're going to fight an enemy, you need the ability to do that. So in your analysis, are we in a position, given the current staffing, to say that we're at a point where we're good, or the cuts have vulnerabilities that we should address at this point? And I'll start with you, Mr. Lynn, and we'll go down the line.
Thank you, sir. I can't comment on the specific force structure or even the numbers that we necessarily need in each of these organizations, but what I can say is this. We will never have enough people if we're simply trying to throw more people at the problem against our adversaries. Our adversaries outnumber us 50 to 1, or in some cases 100 to 1. And so when we think about what is the future of staffing structures, force structures, whether we're talking about for Cyber Command, for NSA, for DHS, we have to approach this problem from the perspective, of course, of thinking about what's the level of human expertise and oversight and control that's needed, but also what are the technologies that are needed that enable our people, our warfighters, our officers to operate at scale against an adversary that has a quantitative advantage against us, and that exceeds orders of magnitude.
Ms. Harding.
Thank you, sir. You're absolutely right that a lot of very talented people have left the government, and there is concern there. I think the question is right-sizing and having the right talent in place to be able to fight back against these particularly talented and committed adversaries. Cyberforce, so I think at least 3 of us up here are in favor of the creation of a cyber force, and that is because we need to think about this talent differently. We need to think about this force structure differently. This is not necessarily, picking up a heavy rucksack and 100 pounds of batteries and running through a field. Instead, this is a very specific set of skills, and we do want to lean heavily into a reserve cadre for Cyberforce. We have lots of talented people in the private sector, 2 of whom are sitting right here at the table with me, who can contribute both to the US government in a military sense and also in their private day jobs. Israel is perhaps an example to look at for this. They do this exceptionally well, where they blend together their private sector and their military activity so that both benefit, frankly. I would also encourage, especially given this committee's jurisdiction, to take a hard look at the Coast Guard. They have a spectacular set of authorities and a really interesting cadre of cyber operators that can do all kinds of things that you wouldn't necessarily expect. It's kind of a latent cyber power that I don't think we give enough credit to right now. Also, the National Guard. There are quite a few National Guard units, especially in places that are obvious, like Maryland, that have real talent in this space. They have clearances, they have capabilities, and they could play a much bigger role, especially in Homeland Defense, than we're currently allowing them.
Mr. Thompson, just very briefly, I would support Emily's comments there. Yes, we've lost some people. We're never going to have enough people, but I think there's some issues we need to get our arms around quickly, and some of them may not be sexy, but they're actually important. Cyber is not it is its own domain, but it transcends all other domains, air, land, sea, space. And until we integrate computer network attack and cyber into our warfighting strategy and doctrine, we're going to be hamstrung. So part of that is making sure we have the structural capabilities, that we have the women and men that can help make that happen. And part of that is ensuring we have the political will, because deterrence only works if it's consistent and if it's credible. And here's the truth. If you look at how we've responded thus far, we've in essence been blaming the victim. An incident occurs, who do you blame? You blame the company, you blame the critical infrastructure owner operator. Yes, they need to do more. But how many of these companies went into business thinking they had to defend themselves against foreign militaries and foreign intelligence services? It's an unlevel playing field. So I think consistency, credibility, and signaling that there will be consequences for bad behavior is essential.
Thank you, and I appreciate the chair allowing Mr. Bagley to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Thompson. I think fundamentally we should think about what we all discussed today as being a call for cross-domain responses at times. Sometimes we'll confront cyber with cyber, sometimes it'll be cross-domain responses. So in terms of resourcing, I can't speak to the appropriate number of personnel. I think those in charge of agencies are best able to speak to that. But I can say we should want CISA to succeed, for example, and to have the processes and the technology they need, and then to make sure this subcommittee, through its oversight powers, is ensuring they have the personnel they need to succeed in that mission. But we should also be thinking expansively, as my colleagues have suggested, about other capabilities in other agencies throughout the government, because when we are trying to change adversary behavior, sometimes it's going to take authorities that are outside of the realm of what we think about with CISA or DHS in general, and instead we're going to be thinking about diplomatic tools, economic tools, law enforcement tools, or even military tools. And so I think we should think expansively about that and work backwards from that problem set.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ranking Member.